Something happened to me years ago when I was in New York. I was on 5th Avenue near Central Park and walked toward Lower Manhattan. I went maybe 3 blocks and decided to cut over to 4th to the east. I turned a corner, not into an alley, but a regular cross street, and the second I took one step into it, I was shocked into standing still. The buildings and cars were all gone. The noise of the city was also gone. There were just trees and a field to my right. A dirt road was where the paved street and sidewalk had been. I was standing on the dry dirt. The road was full of deep ruts. Further down the road was a dark brown house with a low fence in front. On the road at least a block away, a horse-drawn buckboard full of wood crates was creaking and bouncing on the rutted dirt road. I was overwhelmed with panic when I saw this. My mind raced. What if I was trapped there forever? I was dressed in a shorter skirt. I didn't speak what many people spoke, or at least the way that they spoke. I had visions of being thrown into an asylum for the insane and being lost there for the rest of my life. I quickly walked backwards, and instantly I was back on 5th Avenue. A man slammed into my back since I was walking in reverse. I mumbled an apology. The street that I had just backed out of looked normal. The traffic was loud. My heart was pounding, and I stopped a cab and got out of the city as fast as I could. Even though it was fascinating, it was also terrifying. So yeah, I do believe in time slips. Back in 2018, my dad and I went to explore an abandoned manor house. When we got there, we climbed over the gate whilst looking for the manor. To our right there was nothing but fields, and to our left was the back of a large manor house with the lights on in almost every room. There were cars parked at the back of a very well lit, clean and beautiful and very clean lived-in home. We snuck past trying to find the abandoned manor, thinking that it must be up ahead, but to no avail. So we crept back the same way and back over the gates, but we were still out of luck. As we walked down the road a couple of more seconds, we noticed the front of the abandoned manor we were looking for and proceeded to explore it. After exploring a clearly abandoned, old derelict building, we then realized that we were coming out the back and down the same lane, and that it was the same gate that we had jumped over previously. What we had seen earlier was in fact the same manor that was there previously, but nothing to the left or the right of the abandoned manor, or at least not the 4 fields that we had seen earlier. To this day we know what we saw, and must have first seen how the manor looked when it was up to date and operational. But later, as we went around to the front, we saw the present day manor, old and abandoned. Weird. This by no means is the strangest story you'll find on this subreddit, but my family and I still talk about it from time to time, and it's always stuck with us as quite odd. So the story starts during a family road trip circa 2015. I am about 14 and my sister is about 12. My dad has planned an extravagant excursion touring 5 fabulous locations around the Four Corners area of the American Southwest. During the final leg of the trip, we were driving from Mesa Verde, Colorado to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The drive is mostly through rural New Mexico along the desolate desert highway. My family is from a city in the Midwest, so we have never seen this type of emptiness before. There is just pure nothing. No gas stations, no fast food, no other cars. It's just us driving along this lonesome highway. We're almost just sitting there in silence, admiring the strange environment that we find ourselves in. We have been driving for quite a while, 15, 20 miles, who knows, without any signs of life, when lo and behold, what do I see? A solitary man dribbling a basketball along the opposite side of the highway. There was no one else around, and nowhere he could have feasibly come from. Additionally, as far as I could tell, he had no water with him at all, which was unusual considering it was a hot, dry day. I watched him as we continued driving. It is clear that the other people in the car acknowledged his existence, my family. But no one said anything. I brushed it off. Perhaps I imagined him, or it was some strange desert mirage, if that was even possible. I don't think about it again until 10 or so miles down the road. This is simply a guess. Nobody bothered to look at the time or check the mile markers. When I see something that made me question my own sanity. The same man was walking along the opposite side of the highway, dribbling a basketball. This time my mom speaks up. "Did you guys see that?" We all nodded in agreement. "Did you guys see that other one too?" And we nod again, all of us in unison. Throughout the years, we had proposed a lot of different explanations for this incident. Perhaps they were not the same man and they were just wearing similar clothes. Maybe they were both walking to or from a basketball practice or a game and they were wearing a uniform. But that does not explain why they were so far apart. And we did not see any buildings in the area they were walking. Also, if they were playing basketball, they should have had water bottles with them, shouldn't they? Maybe they were doing some sort of charity event, the type where people pledge money if you walk a certain distance. Maybe in the state of New Mexico it's just common practice to bring a basketball with you if you're walking a long distance so that you don't die of boredom. I don't know. All of our logical explanations seem to either be very anecdotal or very flawed in some way. Quite honestly, if my family didn't also see it, I would believe that I actually was hallucinating and that it didn't happen. I would like to believe that it was some sort of a glitch in the matrix type thing. Nobody bothered to remember the time or mile marker, so perhaps we were transported back in time a little bit, you know? Maybe it was some kind of a time loop or some kind of a time tunnel that we traveled through, and we saw the same thing in a different way. After all, we were in a flat open desert, so there were no distinguishing features except for the man to let us know we'd been there before. Perhaps two universes had collided, and in one universe the man left wherever he came from slightly later. So he was at two different locations along the highway. Maybe I'm making this situation into something that it's not. Maybe somewhere out there is a logical explanation for this. Nevertheless, I'd like to believe that they don't call New Mexico the land of enchantment for no reason. I wish to relate something that happened to me and a friend a while ago. First, I am 32 years old, and I currently live in Pennsylvania, but I am originally from Ohio. I am often skeptical of weird stuff that I hear, but after listening to the Mysterious Universe podcast, I had to open my mind back up a little bit about the supernatural, things like spirits, ghosts, or other things. So on to my account. Back in September of 2008, my best friend Sierra and I went to a park named Hocking Hills in Ohio for a day retreat from our busy lives. We had decided on this at random when we first got together earlier in the morning just after sunrise. It was a nice warm late summer day, and we'd just got this wild notion to go for a drive to Hocking Hills since the area is well known for its several walking trails, a cave or two, and several waterfalls and running water in the area, creeks. The day was very warm, maybe roughly about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe 21 degrees Celsius, so we had worn shorts and short-sleeved t-shirts. The park was full of people, and there were walking families, couples, and a lot more all over the place. We started down a trail we had taken many times before, one that would force us to cross a paved road near its end in order to continue, and we also played with our mobile phones. I remember it was roughly around 12, and we kept walking forward around a small hill and up a steeper part of the trail which was near the road. As we walked, we were passed by a group of backpackers before we reached the road, and one of those people turned around to warn us to be aware of a washout up ahead if we were going to take the trail into the woods across the road. They recommended we follow the one next to the fire tower instead, as it bypassed a small clump of down brush. The guy pointed to a small branch off the main trail to our left and told us good luck, or something to that effect. We walked up the little trail, and I remember Sierra stating the path we were on wasn't showing up on her park map application on her phone. I recall telling her it was most likely new and something done for the washout. That was about the end of our conversation, and we moved on. We crossed under where the power lines were strung up into another part of the woods and ended up near the road. As we crossed it to the tower trail just across from where we stood, I noticed there was caution tape all over the fire tower. There was a pungent smell in the air which we could not identify. The windows on top of the tower appeared to be taped up, grimy, and there were flies all over the area. We walked past it, commenting how odd it was, and continued down the trail we had been recommended to take. But it was one neither of us had noticed before on a previous walk to the area. This trail took us past the fire tower and then cut into the woodlands. As we walked into the forest, maybe a couple of 100 feet or so, we took notice that no one seemed to be around. In fact, not only did we feel isolated from others, but we felt very chilled with no explanation. Sierra pointed out verbally while I was thinking, but we just continued walking. Eventually the air started to get noticeably colder and chillier, and also damper. This did not seem unusual at first, but as we continued to walk, the air seemed to go from warm to what felt like the mid-50s in Fahrenheit or in the 10s for Celsius, and at that point we started to shiver. It was also getting darker as we continued forward. At first I thought it was because of the tree leaves covering us, or maybe a passing cloud overhead, but the darkness really did not improve as one expected. As we walked, we looked around and there was nothing but trees on all sides. There should have been a forest edge somewhere, as the area wasn't really that big, but aside from some hills and tall pine trees, there was no ending to these woods in sight. We expected to see the edge near the road. My friend took out her phone to use her GPS because she instinctively felt lost, but her battery was nearly gone. I took mine out of my back pocket and it was also nearly dead. The clock on it showed EEEE for the time, meaning it could not update as it was an older style slide phone with keyboard and camera that, when set to auto adjust, would contact the mobile phone network every 15 minutes for time updates. It was only then, as the light grew dimmer, that I noticed the area seemed to be so silent. Our footsteps, the leaves we stepped on, the grass, the twigs, and our breathing just echoed, but there were no animals or anything making any noise at all. It was eerily quiet. It was too quiet. Sierra got spooked, and so did I. She mentioned that it was very out of the ordinary, and I agreed, but I couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that something was amiss and something was going terribly wrong. I tried to rationalize it, but I honestly really could not figure any of it out at all. We just pressed onward, and after going down a small hill and back up, it seemed to have gotten a lot darker, like just near sunset dark. My friend grabbed my arm and started freaking out about how weird it got. Then the air seemed to have gone still, and we had a feeling of something being very wrong. She dragged me as she took off running forward for an exit. For some reason, we never thought about turning around at all and going back the same way that we came. It never seemed to occur to us as we ran, but the spookiness continued as we could hear our steps echo off the area as things just felt like they grew more gloomy. Then ahead of us, down another small dip in the trail, we could see 2 large honeysuckle bushes on either side of the trail, like a gate. We made a mad dash for these bushes, and just as we pushed through the plants, something odd happened. We were overwhelmed by a change in our surroundings, as light, sound, and warmth returned all at once. It was like stepping outside of a cold, empty, and dark building to a warm, busy street. We stood at the edge of a place known as Ash Cave, which has a large waterfall not too far away with a U-shaped cliff. I turned around to look back from where we emerged, and while the bushes were the same, the area was so different, brighter, not silent for sure because there were hikers near the falls, and warmer. In fact, our skin was cold to touch, which just reinforced the strangeness. We took a moment to rest from that little run. Logic attempted to set in, and we decided the trail we came up must have just appeared out of nowhere because there were many clouds overhead, or a storm blew by us or something, and when we went back, the bushes were there, but the trail wasn't. Nothing looked like it had a few seconds ago. Sierra walked around the bushes twice, and it was the same bright sunny day, with no darkness and no trail. We waited. It was a blue sky overhead, and we could see the edge of the forest and other people. The trail had simply vanished as if we had never walked it at all. On returning to the normal trail we were used to taking and headed back, we took our phones and the time had finally updated. It was now 4 p.m. The normal trail would have only taken an hour to walk fully, so it was a loss of about 3 hours. When we ended back near the fire tower on the normal trail, we noticed that it was normal looking as the windows were no longer taped and it was very crystal clean and there was no pungent smell. We don't know what it was, but it was certainly creepy. Of course, I jokingly told her later that day over dinner that we had entered the fairy realm by mistake and were lucky to get away. She didn't find that funny at all, of course, but either way, we were both happy that this ordeal was over. I wonder if anybody else has had a similar experience and perhaps they can provide some insight and share their own story.